The day before Valentine's Day, I sent a message to my husband, who had been married for 2 years. Let's break up. He seemed to be in a meeting, and it took a long time for him to get back to me. What's going on again? I could think of him frowning and impatient through the screen. It's nothing. I just want to divide it for a few days. Tell the truth. Oh, I recently talked to a handsome guy and asked me to spend Valentine's Day with him. So, that's how you came out. Carefully cured pork belly sizzles on a baking sheet. Sebastian picked up the clip and flipped it over and asked me. I grabbed a piece of meat and took a bite. Yes, it burned my mouth, and I picked up my hand and slapped it a few times. I said that we have no feelings for business marriage, and you still let me test him, Sebastian. Waves of little couples on the street came. I glanced up and complained. I feel like a widow, and I don't even have anyone to drink the second cup of milk tea at half price. Sebastian picked up a piece of meat and put it on my plate. Don't you have me? Sister will invite you later. Woo, Sebastian, you're so nice. But this Valentine's Day, your richest husband didn't prepare any gifts for you. I'm ready, but I don't have to worry about it at all. I picked up my phone and showed it to Sebastian. She looked up, her pupils shook, and she counted the numbers on the transfer in disbelief. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8 figures, and a 30-carat green diamond that he bought at auction on a business trip the other day. What do you mean by him giving me a green diamond on Valentine's Day? Sebastian burst into a foul mouth. Holy, don't show off. Okay, I am willing to have such a husband and widow. I sighed. You don't understand. This money just makes me feel endlessly empty. Get out. Don't give me this emptiness. You'll have a treat for milk tea later. Sebastian took a sip of tea indignantly. But honey, do you really think your husband doesn't care about you? Look over there. They've been following us for a long time. She lifted her chin to look somewhere in the mall, and I looked in the direction she was pointing. Confused, there stood several tall men in civilian clothes. What do you mean? Who are they? It must have been sent by your husband, and he's been following us since the two of us dated. Andy Peter. Impossible, right? When I said that I was dating with the little handsome guy, he agreed without saying a word. Looks like your husband still cares about you. After eating, Sebastian claimed that my words had stimulated her, so she asked me to buy her all the new products in the bubble tea shop. Valentine's Day bubble tea shop staff skyrocketed. By the time the milk tea was made, it was getting dark. We were about to go back with a lot of milk tea, when 2 men suddenly walked over. One of them was holding a microphone, and the other was holding a camera. Little sister, we're doing street interviews. Do you have time to cooperate with us? I'm sorry, we didn't. Before I could say no, Sebastian bumped me with her elbow. Okay, we've got time. I remembered that Sebastian had complained about why no one had interviewed her, and now she had finally gotten her wish. I stood deftly to the side. The man asked a few questions. Okay, last question. It's been very popular on the internet recently. If your husband gives you 100,000 every month, but he never comes home, are you willing? What is the problem? I said depressedly. Why do you want 100,000? I can't even get a ticket to the auction, and I haven't returned yet. Before I could finish my sentence, Sebastian covered her mouth, and she whispered in my ear viciously, don't show off in front of outsiders. I nodded her head to show that she understood. Sebastian let go of me and smiled at the camera. Excuse me, can I cut this one? The man happily agreed. After the interview, the milk tea was cold, and I sent Sebastian home by myself. There was no one at home, and it was pitch black. Also, Andy Peter almost never comes home. I remembered the man's question. I'm a real example of that problem, but I'm in a better situation. At least the bank card is casually swiped. I walked to the living room couch in the dark and called out to the smart butler. Andy Peter, turn on the light for me. After a day of playing, I just want to slump on the couch now. However, the moment I lay down, I didn't touch the soft touch of the sofa. It's a bit of a panic. The living room light was turned on, and I stood up. Andy Peter, why are you here? The delicate face of the man on the sofa was covered with a heavy haze, and the soft and smooth hair was a little messy by the pressure I had just made. He sat motionless on the couch, and looked up at me, with a gloomy face and eyes as deep as a pool of water. Time seemed to freeze, and Andy Peter looked at me, without saying a word. Being stared at like this, I picked up the 2 cups of milk tea that Sebastian had just given me, and handed them over. Do you drink? After a few seconds of confrontation, Andy Peter took it in silence. It seems that he is not very angry anymore. No. What am I doing in my heart? I sat down next to him, and asked him suspiciously, why did you come back? Isn't Andy Peter a busy man? Do you still have time to come back? Andy Peter's voice was deep, and sounding unpleasant. This is also my home. I can't come back. Yes, that's great. Are you talking so badly? I complained angrily. Can't he be a little good-looking? Every time I have a straight face, who will I show it? Andy Peter, didn't you go on a date with a handsome guy and know how to go home? I was dissatisfied that he sent someone to spy on me, so I angrily provoked his chin. Pretend. You pretend again. Who sent someone to follow me? The little handsome guys were scared away. Andy Peter's dark eyes didn't show any emotion, and I forced my momentum. What? Are you worried about getting a cuckold? Isn't he cold? Not interested in anything. Andy Peter shook off my hand and snorted. You'd better not make me angry on purpose. It's really infuriating. I want to continue arguing about something. Why am I messing with it? His lips were suddenly gagged, and Andy Peter suddenly pressed over. I didn't have time to react and lay down on the couch behind me. Andy Peter's voice was hoarse, with a different kind of sexiness in the dark night. Virginia Rosalind, you're still better behaved when you don't speak. After being tossed and turned by Andy Peter all night, I slept straight into noon. The culprit went to work early in the morning energetically. The phone buzzed at the bedside, and I picked it up with my sore arm. Hey, Sebastian was particularly emotional. Sister, why did you wake up? Your family went back last night. That's right. I lay back under the covers and rubbed my waist. Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. Sister, do you know? You're on fire. What mess? On fire. Sebastian continued. Go and see what I sent you. Confused, I hung up the phone and opened a certain platform. The first recommendation that popped up looked a little familiar. My eyes widened in horror. Isn't this the same video from last night's interview with Sebastian? Cut out so quickly. And it's already more than 1 million likes. When I looked at the device last night, I thought it was a little blogger who had just started on which platform. But I didn't expect it to be a big V. I clicked on the comment, and the content surprised me even more. Do I think the girl in white next to me is a bit pretending? Landlord, you're not alone. It's also an auction. I must know that I was interviewed on purpose, and I want to go crazy. In reality, I guess I haven't even been to the auction. It's good looking, but it's not very good looking. The hot reviews are all very angry, and a few have been rushed to the top of the hot reviews. What about cutting out this paragraph? I slid down, and only a few words were normal. I called Sebastian back. Why are these people like this? I haven't eaten any melons in the past 2 days. This group of people is idle. Don't take it to heart. Sebastian comforted me, and I replied nonchalantly. Why are you angry? Aren't they jealous of me? Anyway, I'm telling the truth, and there's no need to get angry about a few untrue remarks. Who will pay me if I'm angry? Sebastian relaxed. I'm relieved to see you so heartless. What are you going to do about this? It's already so hot. Isn't it easy to find Andy Peter? I expertly pushed the task onto Andy Peter. Sebastian sighed and said helplessly, your Andy Peter has a lot of opportunities, and he will clean up the mess for you every day if he doesn't do anything else. Tell me about you. Because of a quarrel with someone last month, smashed someone's 8-figure vase, more than a dozen antique objects. 2 days ago I went to someone's art exhibition, and tore up someone's painting again, and went to the police station. Really, Andy Peter can withstand you so tossed? I said aggrievedly. They provoked me first. I'm telling the truth this time. Okay, you don't have to worry about this. I'm busy with work here, so I'll hang up first. After hanging up the phone, I was in bed thinking about what Sebastian had just said. When you think about it, Andy Peter seems to have cleaned up a lot of mess for me. Then he won't be angry this time. I thought happily. I used to call Andy Peter and ask him to solve it, but there is still an attitude of asking for people, and I decided to be kind to Andy Peter. I scrambled out of bed and went downstairs to rummage through the fridge and prepare to cook him a love lunch. I'm usually very idle, except for soaking in the studio and painting. I also cook by myself, so I'm still a little bit confident in the food I make. After the lunch was ready, it was already past the meal, and I stood downstairs in Peter's house with my lunchbox in my hand. I've never been to Andy Peter, but the front desk seems to know me. She immediately called Assistant Andy Peter. Soon, Andy Peter's assistant ran down. Mom, Andy Peter is still in a meeting. You come with me. I followed his assistant upstairs and looked around carefully. Actually, I also wanted to make a surprise check to see if Andy Peter was recruiting bees and butterflies in the company, but unfortunately, not a single female creature on the 96th floor was seen. Hearing from the assistant that this meeting was somewhat important, Andy Peter finally came out of the conference room after a long time. He walked into the office and was surprised to see me. Why are you here? I'll bring you a love lunch. I raised the lunchbox in my hand. Andy Peter looked at his watch and smiled. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What's wrong with 3 o'clock? It's not all him in meetings. I sat back down on the couch. Why don't you eat then? Andy Peter walked over and silently lifted the lunchbox. The heat preservation effect of the lunchbox is very good, and the dishes are not cold. Andy Peter looked at it for a moment, then looked up at me and asked, "You did that?" "Yes." "Try it." I stared at him expectantly, and Andy Peter looked down stunned, the chopsticks in his hand not moving. "What's wrong with you? I've had lunch." "But what's the taboo?" I looked at him quizzically. Andy Peter paused for a moment and said sullenly, "No." Andy Peter ate slowly, and I wasn't in a hurry, just watched him eat. After all, watching handsome guys eat is also a pleasure. When he finally finished eating, and before I could find the words to speak, Andy Peter looked at me intently. "Say, what's the matter this time?" He knows me too well. I laughed twice and took out my phone. "It's this. You find these pickles for me. I'm going to take the money to kill them." Andy Peter, his eyes became extremely complicated, as if he was desperate to take me to the hospital to see my brain. He flipped through the comments. "Okay, you don't have to worry about that. I just like you so happy." I kissed Andy Peter on the face. Andy Peter seemed to be blindsided by me, and touched the place where I had just kissed. Then I saw the tips of his ears turn red at a rate visible to the naked eye. Inexplicably, I feel a bit broken. I choked my laughter and my shoulders trembled. Eventually, Andy Peter kicked me out in a fit of rage. Andy Peter was quick and waited for me to get home after a spin outside. Open the interview video again, and the direction of the comments underneath has completely changed. At the time, did I think this young lady was full of extravagance? At first glance, there is afterthought. Woo, I used to be the daughter of the Rosalind family, and now I am the wife of the president of the Peter family. And sure enough, some people are born to hold the script of a wealthy family. Rich woman. Rice. Hungry. Rich woman. Look at me. There is even a big V in person, please. Look at the words on the collar on the right side of Simone's shirt. The private custom model handmade by the senior master. There is no market, and it is even said that it is decorated. Upstairs, there's also Miss Virginia Rosaline's painting, which has already started in 5 figures, so there's no need to deliberately make a fuss for the sake of fire. Why did you pick up all my trumpets? I turned off the comments with satisfaction, and when I refreshed it again, an official message from Peter's family popped up. It's the little painter of the Rosalind family, the little lady of the president. The video of the interview was also reprinted, an hour ago, said to be a good hidden marriage. I angrily messaged Sebastian, "I want a divorce." Andy Peter doesn't keep his word, and picks me up. Sebastian quickly replied, "Get out." Andy Peter's official announcement was neat. The photos of me and Andy Peter attending business events together were also released on request. The comments at the bottom skyrocketed. "It's over. It's really rich love. It's so sweet. Look at Andy Peter's affectionate eyes. I admire." I zoomed in and stared at Andy Peter's face on the screen. In the photo, Andy Peter is looking in my direction. A pair of peach blossom eyes are slightly bent, with a sense of drunkenness, which is really a little affectionate. I gave that comment a thumbs up. Show. I also expose my private account. Accounts with only a few followers have grown in tens of thousands. There's not much soreness. I posted a message to thank everyone for their attention, and they left messages one after another. The servant is late. Madam sends more rich news. I am a local dog. I love to watch. I'd love to post it, but Andy Peter and I haven't taken a photo together since we got married, except for a wedding photo. I don't seem to be as happy as they say. Andy Peter was always cold. He didn't seem to like me since I was a child. When I was a kid I had a good time with his brother Arlen Peter, who was always out and about. Andy Peter obediently stayed in his room by himself and read a book, never paying attention to us. Occasionally come out to clean up the mess for us. Sometimes I would go to play with Arlen Peter, and he would kick us out when we got into a hurry. When he grew up, Andy Peter became even more bored, and he treated everyone as if he owed him 1.8 million, especially me. He didn't seem to like me in particular. Every time I see me, I have a cold face, and even after we got married, I don't have a good face at all. The more I think about it, the more angry I get. After a few days of interviews, the heat gradually went down. I've been snorting my own CP online for the past 2 days. Netizens are really omnipotent. They can carefully pick out every detail of me and Andy Peter in the same frame, and then swallow sugar. Someone even made a video. I didn't even notice it myself. I watched it over and over again when I had nothing to do, contributing hundreds of views to that video. At night, I swiped my phone for a while to get ready for bed. I have had a strange constitution since I was a child. That is, I don't wake up in the middle of falling asleep, and I sleep very soundly. However, I seem to be a little strange these days. I always can't help but watch the sugar sprinkling moments between me and Andy Peter edited by netizens in the middle of the night. I suspect I'm stunned, and I'm still eating my own sugar. So, just as I woke up in the middle of the night to play with my phone for a while, I found myself lying next to someone. I was so frightened that I cried out, who are you? The person next to him turned on the bedside lamp, and Andy Peter sat up and rubbed his temples. It's me. I breathed a sigh of relief. You don't live in the company. Andy Peter was tired. Tomorrow is Arlen Peter's death day, and my mom asked me to take you to the cemetery. I certainly won't forget Arlen Peter's death day. The question is, when the hell did Andy Peter come back? Lying next to me so naturally, I didn't even notice it. Shouldn't he have been like this before? Before I could ask my doubts, Andy Peter interrupted me and forced me back onto the pillow. Stop talking. Sleep. He sounded in a bad mood, and I kept my mouth shut. The next day at the cemetery, I followed Peter's family to see Arlen Peter. His mom thought of Arlen Peter, and cried so hard that she was held in his dad's arms. I followed silently and placed a small white chrysanthemum bouquet on his tombstone. The time I spent with Arlen Peter seemed to be replaying right in front of me. The playmate who grew up suddenly became a little box. I was outside, and he was inside. After Peter's family left, Andy Peter and I stayed. I stole a large box of snacks out of the trunk of Andy Peter's car. Andy Peter, seeing that I was struggling, silently helped me lift it and place it next to Arlen Peter's tombstone. Arlen Peter, I remember what you said. I bought you a big box. I opened the box and pulled out a packet of potato chips. This is SD's new limited potato chips. Super delicious. You need to eat more. I talked to the tombstone for a long time, introducing Arlen Peter to the treats in the same way. Andy Peter stood behind me, without saying a word. After a long time, he finally spoke. Would you like me if it weren't for Arlen Peter? What kind of strange problem is this? What is he saying? I was about to ask when I caught a glimpse of a girl in a white dress, walking up with a bouquet of white roses. It's Annabelle. Does she still have a face? Remembering what had happened, I angrily pulled the flower out of her hand and threw it on the ground. What are you doing here? You're not welcome here. Annabelle's eyes were red and she pleaded. I'm coming to see Arlen Peter. Arlen Peter doesn't want to see you. I snorted, and Annabelle's eyes were fixed on the tombstone behind me, trying to linger. I yelled at her. Get out of here. Arlen Peter doesn't want to see you. Andy Peter hit her for me. Hearing me call his name, Andy Peter walked over. Andy Peter couldn't possibly do anything with a girl, of course, but he was deterrent enough to stand there. Seeing that I was resolute, Annabel bowed silently in the direction of Arlen Peter and left. Annabel's arrival made me forget what I hadn't said yet. Andy Peter sent me home, and went back to work. I didn't give me a single extra look. I was depressed and asked Sebastian out for afternoon tea. Sebastian took a bite of cake. That Annabel went to the cemetery again. Yes, I chased her away, but she'll definitely sneak back when I'm gone. I don't believe she can die. Sebastian sighed. Alas, she hung Arlen Peter for 5 years, and when they were about to be together, Arlen Peter found out that she was involved with someone else, and she was so scummy, and wanted to set up an affectionate persona. Arlen Peter, who was already in poor health, became ill after a period of stimulation and was not saved. Yes, why don't I ask Andy Peter to find someone to beat her? Wait, I suddenly remembered something. Andy Peter asked me a strange question at the cemetery, and he said, "Would you like me without Arlen Peter?" What do you mean by him? The milk tea that Sebastian had just drunk, squirted out in a gulp. She wiped her mouth in embarrassment. What are you talking about? That's what he said. Yes. Why did you react so much? I looked at her inexplicably. Sebastian nodded angrily. Do you have a problem with your head? I suspect Andy Peter might think you like his brother. My eyes widened. Holy, won't you? Then why did he ask that? And don't you think Andy Peter is awkward about you? I cold you every day, but if you get into trouble and solve it for you without saying a word, normal men can't stand you anymore. You speak as you speak. Why do you belittle me? I looked at Sebastian sadly, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was possible. Andy Peter, this stuffy gourd probably really thinks so. It's horrible. I quickly pulled out my phone. I need to make it clear to Andy Peter. The phone rang a few times, and there was a busy tone. I went to the meeting again. Every day is work in addition to work. I scolded him a few words in my heart, and my heart to explain clearly instantly dispersed. After afternoon tea, Sebastian was busy going to work. I was bored, and my assistant sent me a message saying that she had found a model. 2 days ago, I asked my assistant to find me a model for me to compare. I happily went to the studio, leaving Andy Peter behind. I pushed the studio door open, and a man leaned against the window. The body is slender, and his body looks fairer and shiny in the sun, which makes people even ignore his gender. I briefly admired it for a few seconds, and then called the assistant over with a dark face. This is the model you found for me. The assistant looked up proudly. Yes, Virginia Rosalind, didn't you say you want to look good? This boy said that he likes your work very much, and hopes to be your model. I gritted my teeth. I'm talking about good-looking girls. I can't survive when I get caught by Andy Peter. Andy Peter never cared about my mouth, but if I did, it's hard to say. As I was talking, the boy by the window suddenly raised his head and walked towards me, looking at me out of the corner of his eye. Hello sister, my name is Carrie Goss. The voice is so sweet, and it looks like I've been practicing for a long time. My aesthetic has long been cultivated by Andy Peter, and this temptation has not worked for me at all. I looked at the man in front of me, delicate but not feminine. Inspiration suddenly came to mind. I walked into the studio and sat down, beckoning to him. The little assistant should have already told you about the specific salary. You sit here, don't move. In order to prevent misunderstanding between the two of us when they were alone, I asked my assistant to sit next to us. As the minutes passed, the assistant said that he was going to the toilet, and I was busy with the painting in my hand and nodded. The general shape was almost finished, and I focused my full attention on the easel in front of me. A pair of warm hands slowly rested on my arms, and before I could react, my hands shook and my drawings were crooked. Damn, who is it? I looked up angrily, and Carrie Goss didn't know when she came over. A pair of eyes looked at me intently. Unbelievable. And her eyelashes twitched. Sister, what kind of play is this? Ignoring the mistake, I got up from my seat, and kept a safe distance from Carrie Goss. He's not trying to play tricks on me, is he? No. You want me to uncover him? You retreat. I have a husband. Carrie Goss was not afraid of my words, and stepped forward and grabbed my panicked hand. Sister, from the moment I saw your drawing, I wondered, Who can paint so sultry? I finally saw you today. Sister, I like you so much. His voice was charming. It doesn't matter if my sister has a husband. I don't care. Is it okay for my sister to hurt me? These are really tiger and wolf words. His hand was held tightly by him, and I broke free a few times. I was terrified. Carrie Goss's confession wasn't over yet. However, I didn't listen to a word, and prayed that the little assistant would come back soon. There was a noise at the door, and I thought my prayers were working, and looked out of the door excitedly. A tall figure stood in the doorway, looking in my direction against the light. Andy Peter. How could he come to the studio to find me? But now was not the time to think about it. Carrie Goss was still holding my hand tightly, and pressing it against her chest. Andy Peter looked quietly in my direction. How can I feel like I have been caught raped? I said nervously. I beg you to let me go. Look at the door. Big brother, my husband is here. Carrie Goss, I'm not afraid. Sister, it's the third person who doesn't get loved. Where did you learn the 3 views? Heh. Andy Peter remained motionless in that position. After a long moment, he took a step back, and the door slammed shut. Andy Peter was gone, not as furious as I had imagined. He didn't even say a word. I lifted my whole body and kicked Carrie Goss. Are you sick? Carrie Goss ached and let go of my hand. Go out and get the assistant to get paid, and then leave. Don't let me see you again. I heard myself commanding him in a voice that I had never heard before. Carrie Goss continued to pester, and by the time I got out, Andy Peter was gone. I went to look for him at the company, but was stopped by my assistant. He's not going to see me. I crouched helplessly on the side of the road to call Sebastian. Sebastian on the other side of the phone seemed to be very happy. What's the matter? Did your Andy Peter come to look for you? You haven't answered the phone. I told him that you went to the studio. Didn't you say a few days ago that you wanted him to be your model? Did you succeed? Let me tell you, your family will definitely be broken up without me. Sebastian kept talking, and the more I listened, the more uncomfortable I became. Sister, you've helped your best friend go underground. I talked to Sebastian about the cause and effect. Sebastian froze, and gave me an analysis of what I had told her. In the end, I was done. I don't need to analyze it to know I'm done. Just the black face of Andy Peter, when he left. It's horrifying to think about it now. Andy Peter has been gone for 5 days. In the past 5 days, he has not returned home once, and my calls have either hung up or gone unanswered. Aside from an invitation to an auction I've always wanted to go to the other day, there was no other news. He hasn't had such a cold war with me yet. In the past, I got into trouble, and no matter how serious it was, he would say 2 words at most. There has never been such a situation of ignoring people. He didn't reply to the message I sent to explain, and I wondered if he had blocked it. In the end, I even explained it to him on Alip, and it was still the same. Andy Peter did a great job. I beat up the chickens of his Aunt Manor in a fit of rage, and that night I flew abroad to see a fashion show. Ignore me if you ignore me. I won't coax me. That being said, I'm really worried. I looked at my phone over and over again, and there was still not a single message. I couldn't see the fashion show, so I hurried back to China. It was late at night when I got home. The lights weren't on at home, and Andy Peter hadn't come back yet. I opened the door in disappointment, ready to go to the fridge to get something to drink. After walking a few steps, the soles of my feet suddenly tripped, and the smell of alcohol hit me. I called the smart butler to turn on the lights. When the lights came on, I noticed Andy Peter slumped at the table, his face flushed, and there were a number of wine bottles at his feet. Andy Peter was already drunk. I crouched down and nodded his head. Andy Peter, what the hell did this man think? Do you never turn on the lights when you come home? Still drunk like this? I have the impression that Andy Peter has always been cold and self-controlled, and has never been so drunk. The phone in his hand is still on, as if it is the homepage of one of my platforms. I picked it up, and found that Andy Peter had already flipped to what I had been doing 2 or 3 years ago. The screen is on the news I posted the night before we got married 2 years ago. He's getting married. Andy Peter seemed to sober up a bit, ducked his phone, and looked at me with red eyes. He's getting married. Virginia Rosalind. Who's getting married? His voice was already shaking. That man's name is Carrie Goss. Is he getting married? Why is it still involved in stand-in literature? I don't know what romance novels Andy Peter has been reading lately. I think it's kind of funny. Now Andy Peter has faded from that unapproachable aura, and he still looks a little cute. Andy Peter continued, before, I always thought you liked my brother, and didn't dare to approach you, but I didn't expect you to like someone else. He didn't know if he recognized me or not, and pointed at me and complained, Virginia Rosalind, you scumbag, I'm wronged. It's all made up by your own brain. I obviously pinned my own comment under that post, the bride is me. Happy. He can't flip through the comments. When he got drunk, Andy Peter really broke my stereotype of him, and the more he talked, the more aggrieved he became, and finally his eyes turned red and he cried, I was born to get umbilical cord blood to save Arlen Peter, and he got everything first, when he was a child. He sobbed with tears, I didn't care about that, but even you're close to Arlen Peter, and they say you have a baby. I saw you on the wall first, but you only got along with Arlen Peter. Whether it's Peter's family or you, it's all Arlen Peter, who didn't want it for me. You don't like me at all. Andy Peter was dumbfounded, and I asked him incredulously, you've always thought that? Andy Peter nodded earnestly. Virginia Rosalind, can't you just like me? He lifted his face, his eyes swelling with emotion. I sighed helplessly. I've always liked you. Yes, I love Andy Peter. I've loved it for a long, long time. But Andy Peter was so bored that I always thought he hated me. As a kid I had just returned from abroad, and moved next door to Andy Peter. One day I climbed over the fence of Peter's house, and met Andy Peter for the first time. He's the best looking boy I've ever seen. So, I couldn't help but talk to him since I was a child. As a result, this person did not follow the routine, saying that I had trespassed into a private house, and wanted to call the police to arrest me. What a beautiful encounter, all messed up by him. In the end, it was Arlen Peter, who came out and saved me. After that, the two of us didn't deal with each other, and he always ignored me. I asked Andy Peter, it's my fault to climb over your fence, but I'm not wrong. Why didn't you ignore me? Andy Peter looked away and staggered his gaze away from me. They all said you had a baby kiss with Arlen Peter, so you're ignoring me? I suddenly remembered something and asked him, then I wanted to confess to you when I was a sophomore and wrote you a love letter, and Arlen Peter said you looked at it, and threw it away. I got angry when I said this, and I slapped him in the face, and forced him to look at me. Andy Peter was stunned. His eyes looked at me without blinking, and his slightly reddened face turned white instantly. I thought it was the you wrote to Arlen Peter. I looked at him strangely. I asked Arlen Peter to give it to you. He didn't tell you. I signed it at the end. His body stiffened. He was mysterious at the time. Let me read it. I thought he was showing it off to me, so I gave it to throw it away. What kind of peerless cleverness is this? I was so angry that I punched him. I was not convinced, and I still want to confess to you in person. Do you remember what you called me? Sister-in-law. I kind of know that I have missed Andy Peter for so many years, all thanks to Andy Peter's self-remedy. He closed his door in the long-standing unfairness of Peter's parents, so he shut out everyone who liked him. I hugged him. Awkward. I like you very much. And Arlen Peter, who likes you too. During the years when I was snubbed by Andy Peter, I formed a strong revolutionary friendship with Arlen Peter. He also likes to draw, and has told me more than once that he wants to give up his inheritance, and that only his younger brother is the real suitable heir. I also asked Arlen Peter to assist me, but it didn't work. We always thought that Andy Peter was just indifferent, but it turned out that he was awkward. I held him silently, Andy Peter's head pressed against my heart. I could even hear my own strong heartbeat. After a long time, Andy Peter reached out and hugged me back, and said sullenly, I'm sorry. The intoxicating smell of alcohol mixed with the faint scent of rosin from Andy Peter's body rushed into my nostrils. I felt like I was going to get drunk. When he woke up the next day, Andy Peter didn't go to work for the first time, and was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I excitedly shared my joy with Sebastian. Sister, we're together. What the hell? Weren't you already married? No. I just found out last night that Andy Peter actually likes me, and he's too tolerant. Sebastian was busy, and said perfunctorily, Oh, then I wish you 100 years of good luck, and an early birth to a noble son. Behind every successful couple, there is a girlfriend who is wronged. So I decided to ask Andy Peter to treat Sebastian to dinner. Otherwise, if I quarrel in the future, who will I cry to? Andy Peter has been mysteriously lately, always leaving early and returning late. I stalked secretly a few times and didn't keep up. When I asked his assistant, the other party was also hesitant and vague. Hey, actually, I found out a long time ago. He hid several romance novels in his study, and even made serious annotations on them. I looked at it secretly. He wrote a lot of words on the pages where the male and female protagonists proposed, because the two of us always thought that the other party didn't like us. The wedding was organized with the help of both parents. Marriage proposals are even more unlikely. I didn't expect Andy Peter to be so careful. Andy Peter moved quickly and mysteriously dragged me out in a few days. In order to make it more photogenic, I also put on makeup for a long time in advance. Andy Peter's grounds are set in a huge garden surrounded by delicately blooming roses. It's like the kind of proposal venue I put in my favorites to eat ashes. After that night's candor, Andy Peter had completely given up on the idea of being a domineering president. He was dressed in a well-cut dark blue suit, fell to one knee and stared at me affectionately. Virginia Rosalind, will you marry me? The cool spring breeze brushed the ends of his hair and disturbed my mind. Even though I was prepared, I was still thrilled by Andy Peter's moment. I reached out and told him out loud, I do. The end.